Hi, everyone. I'm sorry. It's Kira. Pablo was having issues getting on.
Thanks, Kira.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good night.
meeting.
Thank you. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Since it is people who know each other for the most part, I just wanted to begin and introduce Joe Rivera, who's a part of the Racial Equity Commission in New York City. He's here to present on some of the initiatives that are coming before New York City and hopefully to talk a bit about the commission. Joe, just for your context, we do right now just have Community Board 8 board members. We have 2 special committee on racial equity committee members, Bob Bender and Camelia Tepelis. And then Martin Wolpoff is also a Community Board 8 member. So that's all that we have right now. Thank you everyone for your patience. But I'd say let's get started. So Joe, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and then we can go from there.
Sure. My name is Joe Rivera. I am the Director for Outreach and Community Engagement for the Racial Justice Commission. So I just want to say thank you so much for the Community Board 8 for having me here to explain a little bit to you about what the commission is and our upcoming ballot proposals that New Yorkers can vote on. Nice to meet everyone. Good evening to you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for correcting me. Racial Justice Commission. Thank you.
No worries.
And you should be able to share screen. If you're not able to, I can make sure that you can.
Yeah, it says it's disabled right now.
Let's see. How's that go? You might have to send it back to me.
I think I do. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. There we go. All right, bear with me 1 second here, folks. All right. Can everyone see my screen that I'm sharing?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. So like I said before, my name is Joseph Rivera. I'm the Director for Outreach and Engagement with the Racial Justice Commission. And so the Racial Justice Commission is a charter revision commission that came into effect in 2021 under then Mayor de Blasio. And the Racial Justice Commission was empowered with legal authority, of course, of our Charter Revision Commission to seize the transformative potential of this movement in history to identify and propose structural changes and significant policy reforms that advance racial justice and equity and begin to dismantle structural racism for all New Yorkers. So let me unpack that a little bit. What does that mean? So the Racial Justice Commission, how it came to be was then, as I mentioned before, Mayor de Blasio instituted this Charter Revision Commission headed by Jennifer Jones Austin, who was our chair, and Vice Chair Henry Garrido, with 11 other commissioners. And so what they did was we hosted full commission meetings. We hosted community input sessions for community members throughout New York City. And we had academic scholars from across the country actually give input as well as to how we can identify and root out structural racism throughout New York City. And from that, we came up with 3 ballot proposals. And just to be clear, folks, we don't think that this is going to solve racism, but it helps lay the foundation to start addressing it and help root it out. And so the first one is to add a statement of values to guide our government. And so essentially what this is we want New Yorkers to have an opportunity to vote on adding a preamble to the city charter. So currently our city charter does not have a preamble, which is our constitution. And actually that was something that shocked a lot of our commissioners when we started to embark on this journey, that it's a travesty that our city charter, which is our constitution, does not have a preamble. And a preamble is an introductory statement that explains the purpose or goals of a legal document, such as a constitution or a statute. And this proposed preamble defines our collective values and acknowledges our history through a guiding statement. So how will it work? The proposed preamble instructs city agencies and officials to use it as a guide as they carry out their duties. And the preamble is also intended to guide how city government fulfills its planning, review, and auditing functions to move towards the vision set out in the preamble. And so ideally, we want the city to recognize and remedy past and continuing harms, reconstruct, revise, and reimagine our foundations. And the reason why we believe the RGC believes this is important is because our foundational law acknowledges our history and articulates a vision of our future of quality, resilient, and well-resourced neighborhoods and lives for all New Yorkers, which is very important. And regarding this particular ballot question, this is our aspiration question and how we aspire to be a better city. And this is one of the questions that we want to educate our our current New Yorkers on what this is. And just for clarity, our campaign is an educational campaign. So we do not tell people how to vote. Our job is simply to educate the population on what our ballot proposals are. And second is to establish a racial equity office and plan. And so this proposal would create an office, as I just said, racial equity, and a citywide racial equity plan and a commission on racial equity. And we believe this is important because this will make the mayor and every city agency responsible for racial equity. So they're gonna have to walk the walk per se. And this proposal is intended to put racial equity at the heart of city government. And so I'm gonna go with the plans first. So the racial equity plans, it will be every 2 years. And during the city's budgeting process, all city agencies will have to develop a racial equity plan. And those plans will roll up into a citywide racial equity plan that the mayor has responsibility over. The Office of Racial Equity, the mayor will be responsible for appointing a chief equity officer to lead the Office of Racial Equity. The office would also act as a coordinating body for development of said plans. And the Commission on Racial Equity would gather community input to identify priorities to be included in racial equity plans, receive and review data, and issue its own reports on the city's progress. The commission will consist of 15 commissioners selected by different bodies. So the mayor would appoint 7 commissioners. 5 commissioners will be appointed by the city council speaker with a representative from each borough. And then 1 commissioner will be appointed by the comptroller, and another commissioner will be appointed by the public advocate. And one mayor appointee and 1 city council speaker appointee will be required to represent the perspective and concern of New Yorkers under the age of 25. And so with this philosophy is we're trying to incorporate every aspect of New Yorkers and try to make sure that all voices are heard as much as possible. And the third question, what seems to be a little popular, is measure the true cost of living. And this proposal required the city to measure the true cost of living, which currently the city does not know what it is. And the city will be required to calculate the average amount necessary to cover the cost of essential needs in New York City and report on it every year. The Racial Justice Commission believes that the true cost of living will be necessary as a first steps towards economic justice by emphasizing a standard of dignity rather than emphasizing staying just above poverty. So we're really focusing on thriving and not just surviving, and making sure New Yorkers are not living in poverty, but with dignity. The true cost of living is meant to change the conversation by focusing on the actual cost of living here, and rather than living on the poverty-based level number which is provided. And a quick question, trivia question, did you know that the federal poverty guideline says that a family of 4 in New York City does not live in poverty if they have an income of $26,501? So let that stick in your head a little bit. The federal government believes you can take care of a family of 4 in New York City and not live in abject poverty. And every year, the city will have to measure the true cost of living, and the city will be required to calculate the average cost that is needed. And this will take into effect housing, childcare, dependent expenses, food, transportation, healthcare, clothing, shoes, menstrual products, general hygiene products, cleaning products, household items, telephone service, internet service, and other necessary costs that people need to to live comfortably and survive in the city and thrive. And so our plan effectively is to reach more than 5.5 million registered New York City voters. And the way we plan on doing that is with the public support. And you can do this by sharing this deck that I have here with family members and neighbors and host an educational forum for them, or even reach out to me. I'll provide my email in the chat so you can reach out to me in regards to ways that you could support us. And it can be done in different ways. It could be out canvassing. It could be sharing things on your social media. Pretty soon we're gonna have text banks, phone banking. And so we really want people to get involved as much as possible, help us educate New Yorkers on these very important ballot initiatives that they are able to vote on come November 8th. And I'm pretty sure I said a mouthful there. So I'll stop sharing my screen and take any questions if anyone has any.
Joe, I guess from a broad standpoint, are you able to express why New York City has titled this effort as racial justice rather than uplifting all New Yorkers or making sure all New Yorkers are not in poverty? What are the critical elements to racial justice that we want to name, identify, and highlight as a part of this effort?
And that's a great question. And the reason why we focused on racial justice is because it was not focused on previously in the past. And it's kind of why we're in the situation that we're in right now, with New Yorkers living in poverty, many New Yorkers not having a voice and feeling that the structural racism that's happening in the city to a point is very suffocating. So with this initiative, we focused on that because it wasn't focused on the past. And so here we are trying to lay down a new foundation and make sure that we are covering these issues. For example, measuring the true cost of living, it's going to affect all New Yorkers, right? All New Yorkers are struggling right now to a certain degree on living expenses. And right now, the government of the city of New York doesn't tell us how much it costs to live, right? New York Times will tell us how much it costs, or your local news, but none of our elected officials are telling us exactly how much it costs to live in the city. Planning a racial equity plan and commission, even though, like we just stated before, that's going to bring all New Yorkers in, because if we're focusing on race the way the Racial Justice Commission is, it will lay down a foundation, as previously stated, to kind of lift all of us up, because we know once we take care of you would say, the most unfortunate in our society, we all seem to uplift ourselves at the same time. I hope that answered your question to a certain degree.
Okay. Camelia, Bob, and then Martin. Camelia, are you frozen? Maybe let's go to Bob then.
Don't be shy.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Margaret.
Hello, Bob. Nice to
Yeah,
meet you.
hello. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Good
Good.
evening.
First of all, that was very interesting and very informative. So thank you very much for coming and telling us about the ballot proposals. I have to admit, I haven't really focused on November yet. I'm still trying to get through, September, but it's good to know. As I'm sure you know, the community board can convey information, but we can't advocate for a position either. But we can certainly, this is very informative, and we can certainly inform the community board members and the community at large about these three ballot proposals.
And that's perfect.
Like Margaret, I think these issues, I don't know if transcend is the right word, but they're not limited by race. They obviously touch everybody in the city, and they're critically important. From the preamble to the city charter to establishing the true cost of living in New York City, these all strike me as utterly sensible suggestions or proposals. And I hope we will be able to pass them along to the community board and to the community at large. I did not know what the federal government standard for cost of living was for a family of four in New York City. And I have to say, having heard the number, I just, I have to wonder, what were they smoking when they came up with this number? I don't think one person can live in New York City on $26,000 a year. I mean, not a decent lifestyle. I'm sure you can manage on that. You can get by if you're lucky and you've found an affordable place to live. But, but the idea that four people could do that is just so absurd. It beggars the imagination.
And a quick little trivia on that. So actually, they've never tried to correct the federal poverty level. They believe it was established in 1930, and it hasn't been touched since.
Oh, well, that
And-
explains a few things.
And how they do it is they take how much it costs the food of your state, I believe, and times it by 3.
Mhm.
So 28 to 26,000 number, that's for all 50 states.
Yeah, well, of course, as we all know, the cost of living is not the same in New York as it is in Birmingham,
No.
Alabama.
No, it's not. And I don't
So,
even think
yeah.
for 26,000 in Birmingham, Alabama is enough to cut it
Yeah.
completely
So,
honest.
so one last question, and one of the proposals would set up a commission on racial equity, but you're here representing the Racial Justice Commission. So what's the difference between the two commissions?
So we have a mandate for our Racial Justice Commission, and it'll be over effectively on November 8th. So the Racial Justice Commission, as you see right now, we have a 2-year mandate that was put in place. So November 8th, our commission is over, and then it'll be left to the hands of New Yorkers if they decide to plan to vote it in effectively as something that they want to see be permanent.
So the Commission on Racial Equity would then be permanent?
Yes, so that office, the office would be permanent.
Okay, all right, well, thank you very much.
No worries at all. And that's a great question. A lot of people are like, but you have one already. Like, but November 8th is our last day. That's it.
Mhm. Got it.
Amelia?
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for coming over, and thanks to Margaret for inviting you. It's very nice actually to have the first meeting of the year and see such a kind of concrete action item, because it's like go in November and click those boxes or check those boxes, and here's action at city level. I guess kind of my question was sort of half asked already by Margaret, because I picked on the same thing, right? Like it's racial justice, and but there are other areas, but I understood your answer in saying that probably indeed this is the sort of the field where the city and maybe the country overall it's been most sort of delayed in tackling, right? But I do feel that there is, and even when you said that they will establish, if approved, the establish of chief equity officer, here you didn't say of chief racial equity officer. You see what I mean? So to me there's a little bit of hope there, and please confirm or deny that there will be scope in, if this body is formed, in addressing other equity, I don't know, gender, sexual orientation, all these other things. So if you could comment on sort of that aspect of it.
So,
And then okay.
so this one would be specifically a racial equity commission officer, and we actually do have a office of gender equity already established in the mayor's office already. That is, they actually sit right next to us in the office right next to us. So they're already established as a permanent office, and also a mayor's office of equity as well that we partner with as well. So this will be strictly a racial justice commission, focusing on racial aspects, making sure they have a racial equity plan every 2 years. So I hope that answers your question a little
And
bit.
may I ask then, so now there are like 3 officers that you kind of mentioned, the racial equity, the gender, you said, and
Yeah, so
like general equity, do they work together? Or how to
oh
say?
yes,
So there's 2 now, do they work together? And then there will be 3 with the 3 work together?
there is interagency work going on. For instance, the mayor's office of equity, we partner with them in certain initiatives, and then the gender equity office as well. We also work in concert with them as well, because they are different entities and they focus on different aspects of their work.
Yeah, okay. And then I guess you anticipated already my question, where will this be housed? But it will be housed in the context of the mayor's office, is this correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. And then I'm a little bit, I mean, I don't want to say worried, but kind of intrigued that you said a number of commissioners, which sounded like kind of a good number. So I'm just sort of, not to raise the matter of cost, but how to say, like the bureaucracy around a new agency is always a significant undertaking. And we can see, for example, now in the office of the new cannabis control, and like just how, and it was a matter of substance, right? But just kind of wondering in terms of sort of the accountability to the public of this new office that will be created, because I have no doubt that it will pass and, you know, it will be voted into the charter. So I'm just kind of wondering whether those type of future plans of accountability of this office to the public, like were already discussed or kind of what is known at the moment?
Oh yeah, so there definitely will be input from local community members. The office will have to provide planning, what the data they collected, what their plans are. They have to distribute that to the public for public consumption. This is not something that's going to be done behind the shadows. Everything will be public, and everyone will have access to what the plans are, the information collected around cost of living. All these things are going to be have, you know, publicly disseminated for consumption.
Yeah. Okay.
So there will be community feedback in regards to what communities need resources. So for example, if, you know, Bronzeville and Brooklyn and certain Kingsbridge and the Bronx, they might have different resources that they lack in their specific communities, right? And they will have input into what resources that they need for their specific community. So there is a lot of community feedback and a lot of accountability, because this is something that has to be done every 2 years. By 2024, they have to have these plans ready for the public to see. It's not like where if a new mayor comes in, they could just wipe everything out, or, you know, they could talk a good game. Now it's in the city charter. There's accountability behind it and action. So they will have to produce, and the public will know if they're not producing.
Got it. And sorry, one more question, if I may. So, I mean, I hope that Margaret shared with you, we have this sort of ongoing project, right? CB8 established this special committee on racial equity. This is the third year, right, Margaret? This is the third year we're having it. And you know, it started with a report, and last year we worked a lot on it, and that we really tried hard to add more kind of quantitative data about our district. So I hope you will have a look at it and kind of give us a little bit of feedback. But where I'm going with this is the fact that I'm now a member, and I will chair this year the committee of environment and sanitation, and the issue of environmental justice is very, very relevant to our community board. So I was just wondering if you see, how to say, ways to collect information and feed into this newly created body from the level of community boards, especially in communities such as ours that is extremely varied, almost having sort of polar opposites, like really from the lowest level of income to the highest. So that we feel like we have a voice into the proceedings once this new body is being formed.
And so your question is, will community boards have access to, I guess, providing information, or will they be
or giving
data?
you input from our level, sort of say, you see what I'm saying? Because we have like an active SCRE committee, which is a permanent committee in CBA. So that if we have ways to both give you information, but also receive back, if there will be, I guess, a direct link to community boards, I guess is where I'm heading with this. But it could also be that it's too early for this question.
It might be a little too early, but I'm going to go ahead and say I'm hopeful that there will be more communication with community boards, with the mayor's office and other stakeholders in regards to what racial equity is for each specific community, right? It can mean different things. You just mentioned environmental justice. And so that could probably be a big thing for the Bronx in that specific community, right? And so there will be feedback that I'm hoping that everyone can provide to the commission in regards to racial equity. I just don't know specifically will community boards be a big player in that. And if I get an answer to that, a concrete answer to that, I'll shoot you an email and answer that question for you. I don't want to give you the wrong information.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's clear that this is something that's still in the pipeline, but it's very encouraging that the city is looking at it in such a comprehensive way and putting it in the charter. I mean, it's there to stay or be voted out, which I'm sure it would never be. So it's exciting. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of the, each year, like Camelia mentioned, we try to take a new effort to provide additional data to our building report and those sorts of things. And one of the areas that we wanted to do research, Joe, was how to understand what kinds of agencies within New York City provided our community with sufficient resources. Were they, were certain agencies getting enough resources to serve the Bronx, to serve Community Board 8, to serve various areas in the district that are predominantly lower income, and to be sure that they're getting the sanitation visits and that, you know, that they're getting properly the services, which is basically the whole purpose of the community board, to ensure that the community is getting the resources and the services that it needs. So that is one area that we wanted to do more research in, but we just, you know, the scope was too big. We're all volunteers. So it sounds like something that perhaps the commission might tackle
Exactly.
if it continues.
No, exactly. That's what the plans will be for, and the office will overlook that plan, because that is something that's not happening. Not every city agency is practicing racial equity, and they're also not collecting really the information, the data that's needed to provide to the public. And so that's something that if it becomes law, it's accountability tool that could be used to make sure this data is collected, because if we're not measuring it, we're not really going to be able to address it, in my opinion.
Joe, quick apology, Margaret. Julie just texted me that she's in the waiting room. So if you wouldn't mind unmuting her, if you see her on your end.
Joe, I think I might have mistakenly added you as the host rather than the co-host. Are you able to add me back?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. And while we do that, thank you very much. Martin, you want to ask your question?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rivera, for your presentation. I have three thoughts I want to pursue. The idea of the cost of living, the calculation makes a lot of sense. The Land Use Committee of the board is having difficulty trying to reconcile the federal government's AMI with respect to affordable housing. We don't think it's a valid number, because people living in different sections and areas don't have the same definition of affordability. How will your calculation be used and be helpful to us?
So regarding the AMI, measuring the true cost of living won't be able to honestly affect that. But what it will do is put pressure on elected officials and people in power of how much it costs. Like I mentioned before, nobody's really talking about, if we all really listen when they talk about the increasing rents, it's never our city officials that are doing it. It's always the newspapers, bloggers, a little short video on YouTube, the mayor, the city comptroller, city council members. They never come out and say, hey, it costs this much to live in this city, it costs this much. And so my hope is, if New Yorkers do vote on this, it's a foundational reset and making sure we really are addressing this a different type of way. Because like you just mentioned, AMI, and I believe there's another verbiage that's used for it as well, is not really rooted in reality. But this proposal won't help people afford rent right away, or even find an apartment, right? But it'll lay down a foundation and making sure that we're collecting this data, and we're making sure that we hold, our elected officials to power.
But how do you hope to use the information?
We hope to use the information to make sure, find out how much it costs actually to live in the city, right? And establish plans to make sure New Yorkers are thriving instead of just barely surviving. What plans they will be able to institute, I couldn't be able to give you that, to be completely honest, because the proposal hasn't been yet voted on. But the data we're going to collect will be used, it will be disseminated, and they will have to come up with action plans on their own from the Racial Equity Office to address it how they see fit, depending on the commissioners. And I know it sounds like a lot of bureaucracy, unfortunately, working with, cities. It kind of comes with comes with it to a certain degree, but it's the action and accountability tactics that comes with measuring the true cost of living, because we don't know how much it costs. Everyone's pontificating about it, and so we really can't address it right now, to be completely honest, the way it is, in my opinion.
Thank you. My second question is, when do we get a copy of the preamble?
You can get it. I can actually send it over to everyone if you want. You can actually come to our website. Our website has something called the final report where you can read. It's a 30-page document, but it's a great read. It has the preamble word for word. It goes into a little more detail how the commission was fleshed out. I had a longer deck prepared, but it was around 30-40 minutes. I didn't think that was appropriate for this meeting per se, but I can also send that over to Margaret as well. And also put my name of the website in here as well. So you could go in there and check it out.
Yeah, that's great. And then I can share that either as a link or as an attachment to the minutes of this meeting. And that will go out to the community board, be a part of the public record, and go out to anyone who subscribes to the listserv.
Actually, I
Oh.
can't
I
put
just
nothing in the
want-
chat.
yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
tell
We don't
you?
have a chat function,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
just send it to me as an email.
But the
Send it to you
website
as an
is,
email?
sorry, just wanted to add though, I was reading the website and it's excellently done and very simple. I really like the structuring of the website, Joe. Very
Oh,
good.
thank you. Thank you. And it's gonna get better. And it's gonna get better. We're gonna have events put up there. We're gonna have FAQ sheets. So for example, if you're in a community, you want to disseminate information, we'll have it in different languages so people could read them as well. So we plan on revamping the website a little bit more so people can have a little more information, because we're more of a educational campaign. We don't
Yeah,
really
yeah.
tell people how to vote. And so we're gonna have a lot of tools there so people can read a little bit more about us.
Yeah,
I-
it's
I-
Martin, it's racialjustice.cityofnewyork.us.
Thank you. My last thought, taking up on what Bob said before, I have as chair of Law, Rules and Ethics, I have a letter from the city's law department, which indicates that once an item is put on the ballot, the community board is not allowed to take any position for, negative, nothing. This obviously came up when the city charter was changed, and to add the concept of term limits. And while many community boards wanted to jump on this, we were told legally we have no right to. So we can share the information, we can spread the information, but we cannot take a position.
Correct. And that's everyone that works in a capacity, myself as well. You know, people ask me how I'm going to vote on them. I can tell them how I'm going to vote on them, but I can't tell people how to vote on them. Unfortunately. But who wouldn't want to vote on these initiatives, right? I think adding things to our city charter and changing things, in my opinion, is a great thing. Let's see how New Yorkers feel about it come November.
Great. Any other questions?
And if you all, you hosting a function and you say, hey, Joseph, do you have palm cards or do you have anything that we could disseminate? Just reach out to me and I'll try to procure some items for you and either drop them off myself, have you come to the office to pick them up. We'll figure it out, because we want New Yorkers at least to have some information about these ballot proposals, whether they vote on them or not.
Bob?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing, Margaret. As Marty said, we can't take a position on these issues, but we certainly can inform the board that these three propositions are on the ballot in November. And I think we ought to do that, frankly. I mean, they're on the ballot, and people should be informed on the community board and in the community at large. So, perhaps when you give your committee report at the board meeting next week, you might mention this, and we might make the link available to board members, although that's up to the chair, of course.
And I can also send you a blurb of the proposals, Margaret, if you want, abstract wise. You could provide that as well.
Sure, thank you.
Oh, no worries at all. Thank you for having me.
Amelia?
Yeah, so sorry, just exactly kind of following Bob's suggestion. Joe, if at all you have like a visual, a poster type for like for us to use on social media or whatever, coming up for vote or whatever, like something like that, like a visual. And if you have it in Spanish too, that'd be super and extra nice, so that we can use that, and we can put the community board, can put
Yeah,
on Twitter and
what we
Facebook
can
and
what
all
we
this.
can use is, or we actually just got some new posters in. Once they translate them, I'll just send you a PDF file what they look like, or maybe a
Excellent.
JPEG
Yes, exactly.
of the
Perfect.
posters as well. Or even if you want to put those posters up in your neighborhood, I can actually procure some for you and just let you know, and try to either get it delivered to you or drop them off as
Yeah,
well.
cool. Or we can like even like scan those. If you have something already done, perfect. We can
Sounds
just
good to
scan
me.
and post. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and in the
Awesome.
email that I included the office on, if you are able to coordinate with them, they're the ones who can distribute them throughout the community.
That's the CBA email, correct? That you
Yeah.
included me in?
Mhm.
Perfect. So I'll send whatever graphics that I have. I'll send it over to that email.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
any last burning questions for Joe? Joe, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. We really appreciate it, and thanks for all that you're doing at the commission.
No worries, Margaret. You have my email. Feel free to disseminate it amongst everyone, and don't feel shy to email me with any questions that you have. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care.
Great, thank you. You too. Have a good night.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. Okay, so just a couple of things from our old business discussion. Thank you everyone for your questions and thoughtfulness. I did want to circle back to a few areas that we left open from our meeting in June that we would come back to. And that certainly includes our plan for fiscal year 23 that we might want to dig deeper into that pilot work that Camelia had led, looking at environmental justice areas that overlap with our specific requests for capital projects from fiscal year 16 to 23 that we talked about last night at exec, and then perhaps explore other ways that the community board can help us accomplish some of these goals. So that being said, we talked about something very specific, but your initial thoughts on our plans for fiscal year 23, and where do we feel like we left off in 22, and what do we want to pick up to go forward? Go ahead. Just jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. I think how to say, I was thinking back of last year, and I feel like, how to say, and last year, obviously at this time we had previous things from the previous year, right? So I feel like we sort of only sometime in early spring we said, okay, but what's our deliverable? Our deliverable is a report every year. So we kind of started late in the year looking at the reports, right? And then we had more conversations to structure our input and how we go year by year and all that. So I feel like now we should sort of learn from last year and start earlier, right? In dealing with where do we want to move forward the report itself. And I mean, I do appreciate the recognition on the issue of environmental justice, which will anyway remain on like open, ongoing thing. But in all honesty, for me personally, and having read also Martin's comments in the email, thank you, Martin, I do feel like last year we were a little bit possibly overly cautious of doing too many things, and we didn't truly had we didn't truly read like the first body, the narrative, if you want, part of the report, which was done in the very first year. And I do feel it needs a sort of refreshed look, not only with Marty's comments, but also in the way it is written, right? Because it was written as a very raw, green feedback to the George Floyd event, and it feels that way. But I think we are already 3 years after. So I do feel like the tone should be a little bit changed, a little bit less, I don't want to call it preachy, but you know what I'm saying? A little bit less top down, but a more kind of comprehensive and giving like a more objective vibe to the role of the community board in it. So that would be sort of my personal suggestion, the full sort of narrative of it. And again, of course, obviously updating it with what we have from last year in terms of capital and the map that you did and anything else that may come up. But that this would be my initial thought, that the narrative body of the report needs all of our eyes and brains as one of the things for you to consider.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with what Camelia just said. You know, I also read Marty's email, and there were a couple of things he pointed out in there that I realized, you know, I said to myself, gee, I didn't realize that was in the report. You know, and there are a couple of places where clearly there's something in the report that should not be there. I think it would be a good idea to go back over it again, reread it, which I haven't done in months. And, you know, I think it would be a good idea for all of us to reread it and you know, make sure that the language is still appropriate. As Camelia said, you know, it really came out of a specific event and a specific time, excuse me. And now that, you know, now that time has passed, let's make sure that we have a report that, you know, that really should transcend a particular moment and still continue to be relevant. So, you know, that's one thing that I think we can do. The other thing is that, you know, we have made actually some considerable progress in doing what we set out to do, which was to work with committee chairs and to look at some of the capital and expense items and make sure that they do reflect the, you know, the equity issue throughout the community. And, you know, as we've said, looking at, you know, we're going to talk, as we know, we're going to discuss the budget at the October community board meeting. And, you know, I think looking at several of the committees, there really does seem to have been a real effort made to take equity into consideration in determining the priorities. So, you know, I think the path we set out on, working with the committee chairs, was exactly the right approach. And we should continue to do that and make sure we're in communication with the committee chairs throughout the year on not only their budget priorities, but also the issues that they're addressing within the community. So, I mean, those are my thoughts on, you know, what we should be doing this year.
Julie, do you have any thoughts that you want to share?
Not at this time. Everyone's pretty much set. This point, especially Marty, thank you for that thorough letter. Oh my gosh. I too have to take another look at the document in order to really respond.
Okay. I think it's fine to look at the report. I think it's been our top priority for the last couple of years to look at the report and reread the report and then tweak the report and wordsmith the report and all those sorts of things. So if that's something that you all feel like is a priority, I totally support it. I would just ask that there's a firm timeline and that we're very clear about what it is that we want to achieve. Because we did this for, I mean, since I've been chair, we did this for the first 3 months. And then we tackled some other things on mapping and those sorts of things. So if we want to exist for the report, that is certainly fine. It sort of is reflective of perhaps the time or things like that. But I think there's more to be done. I would also say that, I mean, I think in terms of the capital projects, we've just sort of pointed out what the asks have been. And then as you can see from the prioritization of some of the asks, we're sort of like, we're in the same position again. I don't necessarily see any changes in prioritization on the capital asks or even acknowledgement of the mapping or the environmental justice areas that we do want to focus on. Those to me should be the top priorities. All of the issue areas that, you know, as you all pointed out, that the areas that haven't been addressed in the community that continue to be capital asks perfectly overlay with the environmental justice areas. And so what is it, where in, at what point in time does the community board decide to say like, okay, so these are the areas that are the most risk, the most underinvested. So therefore we want to put our time and effort into that. And I mean, that's me is personally, that's where I think our effort should be focused on, because that's where the rubber hits the road. Other areas that we feel as though need to be addressed. Just chime in. There's 4 of us, 5 of us.
Okay, Bob, I'll go first if that's okay. So just I mean, I agree with you, Margaret. It's just a question of okay, how we balance and to whom we assign sort of maybe a certain task or whatever. And on that matter, honestly, Bob, forgive me, I will be a little bit forward here, but I would very much suggest that if you want to and you feel you have the time to maybe do the first read, especially since you said you didn't read it in a while, you have like a fresh slate, sort of say. And if you want to do like the first read of this year, and like if you feel, like coming to, I don't know, in like 3 months or whatever, and with suggestions or thoughts or comments, but if you would want to go that route. One thing just before I forgot and comes out of my head, as you want to point out that is relevant, it's the whole our district may get redistricted, and our the maps of our electeds, council, senate, congress, whatever, there may be small shifts that will be voted on.
The community board district
Not
is going to change?
at the at the city council
council.
has a redistricting map
Mhm.
going on right now. So my point is for us to capture this moment in time when that map gets decided. I don't know, for example, they want to take, like, there is now under question, there was even an article in the Riverdale Press whether the section of Kingsbridge Heights, how do you call it, more maybe no, where the armory is on East
Yes.
Kingsbridge Road,
Yes.
will be incorporated to our community board or stays over to the south. So
But there's a difference between the council member and the community board.
yes, no, I know, but the fact that changes and our electeds may lose or gain areas, I feel like it's a process that is happening this year and should be at some point captured. But when it gets to a resolution, obviously, like, or removing Woodlawn, for example, from the city council, our current city council district. So all this to say, I feel like, again, this is a moment in time, and as those maps are landing, and you saw sort of the trouble that was with the elections for Senate, and what a role they had on the election of candidates. I think that should be somehow reflected in the report, just when that is completed, and to say how what role it plays in as far as the district of community board 8. But sorry, I'm just a little bit tired. So my suggestion basically would be if Bob would be willing to take over the read of the narrative and come back to us with his thoughts and maybe suggestions, and this process of redistricting and reviewing city council boundaries, we also, I feel like, should capture that in the outcome. Sorry, that's it.
Yeah, I'm happy, Camelia, to reread the report. and come back next month with suggestions. I would encourage everybody on the committee to try to reread the report. But I'll be happy to do that. I don't think the city council boundaries have changed as of now, at least as it affects Community Board 8. I know the congressional area has changed. The state senate, I believe, has changed. The assembly district has not changed, and I don't think the city council has. So,
Yeah, it
we
has.
still have 3 different council
It
members. within-
Changes.
I'm sorry?
It does in fact change the
Oh, okay.
representation of the district. Mhm.
Okay, all right. Well, you know more than I do then, Margaret. Thank you. The one thing I did want to bring up, though, which just occurred to me, and I'm sorry I didn't think of this sooner. For those of you who were at the land use meeting on whenever that was, what was that? I'm losing track of the days, Tuesday night, or at the exec meeting last night. The land use committee has embarked on an examination of affordable housing, which was something we just heard Mr. Rivera touch on. And this really is an equity issue. This is something we should be paying careful attention to. The whole question of what constitutes affordable, as we were discussing in the conversation with Mr. Rivera, is based on premises that frankly make no sense whatsoever. They're based on an AMI that takes in areas outside the city of New York, for example. So this is an issue that's before the Land Use Committee. And it really is a very important issue that we should all be involved in, and we should try to stay on top of. The community board has traditionally done a district needs statement every year. And for the last years for which the district needs statement has been posted, affordable housing has been the #1 item on the district needs. And that's probably true, I would bet, in the majority of community boards throughout the city of New York. I mean, it's a truly critical issue. That's an area I really think we should pay very careful attention to over the course of the next year, because it is under discussion. It really is an equity issue that goes to the heart of what we do. And I'm on the land use committee. I believe Julie is also on the land use committee. And this is something we should really come back to every month. Because as I say, I think it intersects as strongly as any committee issue does with what we're doing on our committee. Those are my thoughts for now.
Okay. I'm not on the land use committee, obviously, but to what extent are we talking about affordability at land use for these? I mean, is there, I don't think we'd be well suited to take it on ourselves, but I think working with land use would be really helpful.
Oh, absolutely. No, I wasn't suggesting that, that we take on that issue. The conversation has started at land use. I don't know exactly where it's going. I don't know how thorough it's going to be. We started with a development that is being planned for the former visitation school and church site. But I know that the chair of that committee is interested in bringing this issue of affordable housing before the committee for further discussion. At this point, I'm not privy to exactly how that's going to be done, how thorough it's going to be, exactly what the methodology is going to be. But as I say, this is #1 on the district needs and has been for several years. So, I'm certainly going to pay attention to it. I'm sure Julie will as well. And I think this is something we want to bring back to the committee for discussion before the committee itself as well. I'm putting it out there because I want everybody to be aware of it. We can't take it over. We shouldn't. It's not appropriate. But we should certainly monitor the situation and offer whatever input we can.
Okay.
You know, again, doing what we've been doing, which is working with committee chairs.
Amelia?
Yeah, I think yeah, Bob's contribution are absolutely appropriate. Is also absolutely obvious. So thanks for stating it. What I want to add, and I wanted to be on land use this year, but I was explicitly singled out for denial, which is a whole equity issue into itself that I don't want to go into. But I wanted to add that even in the Tuesday presentation of that developer that specifically has a project on affordable housing, as he clearly mentioned, part of that will be housing for homeless people. I think he mentioned a 15%. All this to say, the issue of how affordable housing is intricately connected to the issue of homelessness. So let's just be aware of that and have these issues treated in jointly together, because obviously if you have affordable housing, you have less homelessness to begin with, and the whole host of social problems related to that. So just to flag that this as two matters that are interlinked, Bob, if you may. Yeah.
So that's exactly right, Camelia. The only alternative to homelessness is affordable housing.
All right. Yeah.
And, you know, what I'm saying is this is an issue that I think goes to the very heart of equity
Yeah.
in the community. And that's why I want to be sure that everyone on the committee is aware of it and that we should take a great interest in this conversation.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other thoughts or goals that we want to tackle for the year? Okay. All right, any other comments, things that we want to discuss tonight? I know we're pushing up on 8 o'clock here.
Margaret, can you hear
We
me
do
now?
have to approve minutes.
Oh,
All
thank
right.
you for that.
Hey,
And I think
Margaret,
we have a quorum
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, I don't know how to work the phones on this Zoom yet. I was just gonna say in regards to projects to work on during this term, I'd also like to check into the various sites with the elected officials to see what they're up to with the equity situation and give some feedback to the committee. I'll just check out to see what the council is doing, even though we have no input into the state, but just to see what's going on with the various elected officials and various groups.
Great. Okay, any other thoughts or things that you wanted to raise tonight? Okay. All right, well, thank you all.
Well,
Thank you.
we haven't approved the minutes yet, Margaret.
Any? Okay,
Motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting
thank you.
from June 2022.
Are there any objections? Are there any
Didn't-
abstentions?
Then we have to make, don't you have to second the motion? You don't have to second the motion?
I don't think you have to second a motion to approve the minutes, but just to be certain, I'll second it.
All right, thank you. Any objections? Abstentions? Okay, minutes unanimously pass.
Margaret, let me just say thank you very much for bringing Joe Rivera to the meeting tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
That was a good
Bob, for-
discussion.
Yeah, thank you for circling back on that. I wasn't able to get anyone earlier this year, so thank you for sparking that connection and connecting him here tonight. So thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah, just joining in thanks here. It couldn't be more appropriate at best time. There's still a lot of time to make their, website publicized a little bit more and have the public aware. So it's absolutely fortunate that we had this tonight. So thank you, Margaret.
All right, thank you, everybody. Our next meeting will be in person. I have no idea where. I assume the office. So we will be in communication about that. And I think that's it. So have a great night. Thank you all for being here. No motion.
you,
Do we have to make a motion to close? I don't know. All right. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.